Alright, so back here on the 1978 Toyota pickup. So, got the engine and trans out, and you can see the two sets of holes that I got now for the transmission cross member. So, these holes here are the new ones that I'm going to mount it to. So, that was, crappy to have to redo that, but it wasn't actually that terrible. Having to work underneath me, working above me when I was drilling from down below upwards was kind of lame. And then, getting that all welded and everything from underneath was a struggle, but, got it done. So that should all be good to go. Also got a bunch of weld on the motor mounts, so I just had these tacked previously, so got those welded all the way around. I got a little touch of grinding that I'll probably do on that, but those are working okay. That beefy metal is great to work with because you could blast it with the welder and it ain't going anywhere. Plus these side pieces are so short that there's really no chance of it going anywhere. When I yanked the motor out, that was quite the faff. And so, even with, the new motor mounts in there, and I actually took the mounts off of the engine to give myself more room, once all that gets filled in there, I don't think there's a chance in hell that you could pull the motor and trans out in one piece. I had to get a bunch of angle on it in order to get it out and then up. And, the trans was super high inside of the passenger compartment there. There's just no way in hell that it'd come out if there was an actual floor inside of there right now. I butted it all the way up against here, so there's no chance that it would have come out with the radiator attached. And so, my thought previously that any sort of work on the engine is going to be a cab off affair is totally confirmed. Like, if I got to do any work on this thing, its first step is going to be cab off. And so, that's quite the faff. But that does mean that, like, whenever I'm planning stuff out here, I'll be making sure to try to avoid, hooking anything from the frame to the cab, or obviously there's got to be some stuff like your pedals and crap got to come through the firewall, steering column, clutch and all that other stuff. There's going to be, some electronics that'll be coming through for, the wiring harness and everything to run the engine. But, for other stuff, as far as like fuel lines and pumps and everything, you could see the cab had these little clips on it. And like down here where there's clips on the cab and then clips on the frame, anything like that where, I got a brake line, fuel line, whatever, I'm going to try to avoid getting anything hooked to the cab at all because, with that transmission cross member welded in, you can't drop the transmission down. Like, that ain't happening. And I did think about that for a little bit to see, like, would I make some plates, then, be able to bolt that cross member to the side or do something else. And, like, it was getting all kinds of complicated. I showed you when I did that, like, the frame has, like, a bend in it. And so with the bend in the frame, like, trying to get a plate that's going to sit flush, drilling, sleeving, all that other nonsense, I'm like, I'm not going to deal with that. So, it will eventually bite me, as everything does, that I've decided that, that's going to get welded in, and, the way this firewall is going to get cut out, that it'll be cab off in order to do any sort of, like, major maintenance. But, future me will curse current me, but current me is going to just not deal with it. So, the other thing that I'm working on is finish welding. These are the pieces that actually mount to the engine, and so these got to get finish welded also. I just like threw them together. You see, that's hideous. I didn't grind anything right here, so it's all ugly and beat up and everything. But I got to get weld on both sides. And the thing here is, if I just threw a bead of weld, this side's not too bad. Like I got some gap here, but I don't want it sticking up because this plate is what touches on the plate that's on the inside of the frame. So I can't have any weld sort of sticking up right here. So you could see like on the other side, if I just threw a bead right here, it'd stick up probably like 1/8 of an inch or something. And then I'd grind all of that weld off. And sure, I'd get some penetration, but since this is a butt weld and it's so tight here, like it's not going to be real great. Normally, I'd want to like, chamfer those edges, but again, since it's a butt weld, like there's not really a good opportunity for chamfering it before you put it together. So what I'll do is I'll just take my grinder and I'll run a groove all the way down this joint right here, and then I'll be able to get weld inside of that joint, and then I'll do the same thing on the other side, flip it around. The inside's not a big deal because I just need to make sure there's clearance for the bolt heads that are coming through, that I don't get so much weld in there that I go to bolt it in and the bolt heads can't sit flush, so I got to be concerned with that. But it's not nearly as bad as up here. So I'll cut those grooves in and grind it flush, flip it around, and do the welding on the other side. So you can see with it done that way, like I will have to grind some, but like, most of the weld is like penetrated down into that groove that I cut in there. So I will, grind around here and just make sure it's flush and everything. But, instead of getting me like 1/8 of an inch and basically no penetration, this way it's mostly flush and then not much grinding left. So probably hard to see, but you could probably see, you know, the weld coming through on that other side. So I mean, I was able to chamfer this piece, so I got a little groove already, but you can actually see the weld coming through, so there's really good penetration. So that's why I'm doing that. Alright, so just a quick fit over here to make sure it didn't move around. I doubt it did because the metal's so beefy. Yep. It's just fine. So, yeah, that'll work good. So, next up after this, so I got all of the heavy welding that I got to do done. So the reason why I was getting to this is right now my machine is set up with a thicker gauge wire to do the thicker pieces, and so I got to swap out the wire, the heads, and all that other crap, and I didn't want to be going back and forth. And so now that I got all the heavy stuff welded that I need to do right now, I got to swap over the wire and get back to doing a bunch of sheet metal stuff. So I'll get to that. Alright, thanks. See you on the next one.